Welcome back to Inner Voice of Knowing. It's an absolute pleasure for me today to have this special guest on, Dr. John Demartini, a behavioral expert, um, multiple author. I couldn't even Google how many books that you've written, and an international inspirational speaker. And a word that I didn't know, polymath, which actually means, very learned. And Dr. Martini, welcome so much to the podcast. It's just wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I was running behind, but I got here.
That's okay. This is a wonderful experience for me because many years ago, I was teaching, concepts of the secret, etc., since I was about 25. And I'd made maybe 12, 13 years ago, what I term a power poster that others call vision board. And I had you on it with a couple of other people. So this is sort of our second moment, but the first time I've met you. The first one was the movie Adversity, actually, that's about to come out. And when I was invited to be in that, it was one of my daughters that said, "Mum, didn't you have Dr. Martini on a power poster?" And I think Michael Beckwith was on there as well, who's also in the movie. So why don't we start there with, let's get into a little bit of a discussion about adversity and the gift that's actually in adversity for us.
The more down and out you've been, the more up and in you get to go.
Love it.
And I really believe that the things that we think are challenges aren't. They just appear to be initially.
Yeah.
We've all had experiences that, at first we were conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides. But then as the days and weeks and months and years go by, we start to discover the blessings and the so-called curse. But why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? Why not just ask the questions initially? What are the blessings? How is this helping me get what I want in life? And I've had people that have come to me and they want to run their story and be victim of history.
Yeah.
And I have them ask them, okay, how did it benefit you? Well, it didn't. How did it benefit you? I can't see it. How did it benefit you? How is it helping you in your relationship? How's it helping you in your business? How's it helping you in this? And I hold them accountable, and they start discovering that the whole time there was upsides, and they never took the time to look. So they wanted to run their story instead of actually look at how it's serving their life. And sometimes we think these setbacks are setbacks, but they're not. They're just opportunities for us to grow more efficiently and effectively in the direction of what's most meaningful. So adversity, if you look at the word ad, it means move to the center.
Mm-hmm.
Abductor moves away from the body center. Adductors move towards the center. Versity, you could call it in play on words and call it a university, or you could call it versity. A university is where you learn.
Yes.
And come back to the authentic center. So adversity is basically a feedback mechanism to authenticity and guiding us when we've been away from who we really are to make sure we get to be who we really are. Because the magnificent who we are is far greater than any fantasies we'll impose on ourselves. And it's a wake-up call, a checkup from the neck up.
I love the way that you speak. You speak in such a depth, but also a simplicity at the same time. And it makes perfect sense. Now, you started your journey, what people would term reasonably young, and also with a learning challenge. Would you say that your path has been spiritually infused within your physical existence? Does it have a spiritual element to it? Or is it more about, the mind and the brain and that sort of line?
I don't see them separated. They're all one to me.
Yeah.
I say true science and true religion don't fight. Spirituality is inspiration. So I don't ever see them as separate. I believe that when we live authentically and by priority, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is the integration center for the narrative biographies of how we want our lives to be. And so we're inspired spontaneously to act when we're living congruently. So our path of spirituality and our path of mastery and our path of mental faculties and is the same. Our highest value, our identity, our ontological identity revolves around, our teleological purpose revolves around, and our epistemological area of expertise revolves around it. And what inspires us, which is our spiritual path, really,
Yeah.
is the same thing. So I, as far as I'm concerned, it's everything that's going on in life is trying to get us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm a real believer that the universe is more intelligent than we think. It's our own ignorance that makes us think it's not. It knows how to make sure we learn our lessons.
So when did this path really unfold for you, and what was it about it that called you?
Well, formally, it was around just at 17.
Yeah.
But I was already noticing things. I lived on the streets when I was a kid. So at 13 years old, I was on the street. And when I was 14, I had quite a few interesting experiences that made me kind of wonder, well, that the synchronicity of these events seemed to be too synchronous.
Mm-hmm.
And made me pause for thought. I'm going to say something that may be shocking to some people, but I'm going to say it because it's really what's going on. I actually had a book with this story in it, and they refused to publish it. They can't put that in there. But I said, but it's the truth. So what happened? They said, well, it's shocking. So be prepared. So when I was 14 years old, I hitchhiked from Houston, Texas to California.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to go surfing. So I had a headband and some sandals, and I was in the 60s and, free love and that kind of stuff. And expanding my consciousness through natural herbal means and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I make it to Huntington Beach, California. And I'm sitting on the tip of my surfboard, looking at the waves, waiting for the offshore breeze to come in to go out and surf the last couple hours. And I'm thinking, I made it to California. In Texas, you could sleep on the beach. There was no rules about it. There, they had a curfew. You couldn't do it. So all of a sudden, this beautiful, beautiful blonde girl comes up to me and leans down and says, "Are you a runaway?" And I look up and I saw this beautiful girl. And I said, "Well, not exactly. My parents dropped me off on the freeway. Gave me a ride." I think they wanted to save money, and they figured, let's let him go surfing.
There was a greater independence for youth back then,
Yeah,
wasn't there?
yeah. I
Get
had
out and experience the world.
well, my dad taught me independence when I was 9. I mean, I had to pay $7.50 a week to live at home. I worked.
Wow.
So he wanted to make sure I was independent because I had learning problems and I didn't know how to read till I was 18. I had learning problems. So I'm there and this babe is saying, "Well, are you a runaway?" And I said, "No." And so, "Well, would you have a place to stay?" "Well, I'm going to stay on the beach." "Well, you can't stay on the beach. There's a curfew here at 10 o'clock. You have to go down to the cliffs." I said, "Well, I guess I'll go down to the cliffs. It's a 3-mile walk. I'll go down there and sleep on the cliffs and come back here during the day."
Yeah.
And she said, "Do you need a place to stay?" Now, pardon me for doing this, but when you see a beautiful 27-year-old stunning girl and ask, "Do you need a place to stay?" You kind of feel like, mama.
Well, of course, yes.
Yeah.
So when are we leaving?
Yeah. So I went off with this girl and I stayed with this girl. And she was a combination of a mother figure
Mm-hmm.
and a girlfriend figure. It was a mixture. And that would be illegal today, right? Because that's
very interesting.
that would be illegal today.
Yeah.
I was a victim. But I was very grateful. Yeah, happy victim.
Yeah.
But in the process of doing it, she was part mother, part girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, what I found out is that she had been married and she had a 4-year-old son, and her husband was wealthy family. And because she didn't have a job and he was paying for everything, when he divorced her, he got the child. And so she was trying to work and making bathing suits to sell them at this boutique at Huntington Beach in order to get her child back. So she had a son who was 4. Her husband was younger, 24 and a half. If you put the son's age and the husband's age together, is 28 and a half, and divide by 2, it was my age. If you put
Oh,
my
wow.
mom's age and my average girlfriend's age and put them together and divide by half, it was her age. She was a balance
Hmm.
of mother and girlfriend. I
Yeah.
was a balance of son and husband. And we have this dynamic. And I got it at 14 that I'm not missing anything.
You recognized it then in that
Yeah, I
experience.
saw it because when I left her and I went back onto the streets because I had to leave there
Yeah.
eventually, I I lived on a pallet, on the back of this pallet, in back of the Golden Bear uh, place where they had bands playing. It was a club. It was on right on the Pacific Coast Highway, right in Huntington Beach, block away from right there at the pier. And I slept on a pallet there, and Buddy Miles performed there, and BB King performed
Oh,
there, and Ed Nugent, and all these rock guys and jazz guys. And they became like parents. And the girls on the beach became now girlfriends. And I watched this morphing. And then I got a job at Jack's surf shop, and the guy that owned it, Jack and his girl that worked with him, were my parents' age, and I had girlfriends on the beach again. So I was watching this morphing of parents and girlfriends keep changing form. And then I hitchhiked down to Mexico and I watched Who Picked Me Up, and it was the same scenario. And so I kind of got this sense that there was a higher order, some sort of a, something keeping an eye on me. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't something intellectual. It was just something I felt like I was being taken care of. And that really gave me a feeling like no matter what happens, it's helping me. It's actually on my behalf. If I don't see it, look again. So
had
I was
you
14 when this was happening.
had you always been an observer?
I can't say that that was massively observant until that moment. I mean,
Hmm.
when I was 13, I lived in the back of this bowling alley temporarily, and I noticed that the people, there's a lady, there's a waiter, and there was a guy who's a barbershop guy, and they were like parent figures, and
Hmm.
they kind of kept an eye on me back in the back and made sure I got food. And then there were other kids that were friends that were coming and playing pinball back there. We had pinball machines.
Oh, I loved pinball.
So I had a parent figure and buddies and some girls and guys, but I
Yeah.
didn't get it then. I look back and I could see it.
Yeah.
So it was there at 13, but I didn't see it. 14 is when I became conscious of it.
That's amazing. And such a young age to start having those kinds of realizations. Do you then feel that the people that you cross paths with, or teachers, um, validated what you were experiencing and observing, or took you
Well,
deeper?
I think it's just an ongoing, I mean, I'm sure you're the same. You just keep learning and we just
Yeah.
keep going deeper down the rabbit hole as we pick up ideas. But I had a gentleman when I was 23 who had 6 PhDs and a bunch of doctorate degrees. And he became a mentor. And I learned a lot from this guy. I was 23 at the time, just starting professional school. And his depth of knowledge, he's only 35 years old, but his depth of knowledge was surreal. And he placed out of school. He was like this savant, but not autistic and very bright. And I learned a lot from him. And he was a very aware Indian mystic.
Okay.
And I'd have to say that catapulted some more questions. Maybe you want to study the mysteries of life. And and then when I was 18, I just wanted to know what the hidden order in the apparent chaos was.
Hmm.
And there's something that Leibniz, the German philosopher, did. He had this exercise where he had his students and he asked them to take a piece of paper, like this, piece of paper, and quickly, randomly, with a pencil, put 20 dots on it, as randomly as you could. But make sure you number the sequence of whatever you randomly want to put. Just put it down, whatever sequence you can make it. Then he would take that piece of paper and he put a Cartesian grid on an XY axis. And then he would write a mathematical formula for the function of X versus in relationship to Y. And then he'd have them go out there and do the function, and all their positions had a math to it. And it just stuck in my head. I thought, this guy, what they thought was random, he had knowledge of an order that they didn't see.
Yes.
And Stephen Wolfram, the mathematician, said that the difference between randomness and order, or disorder and order, is the computational boundary of our awareness. If we have algorithms to help us see the order of it, we discover the order and we call it ordered. If we don't, we call it disordered. And at very young age, I wanted to know the hidden order and the apparent chaos. And so I worked at developing methodologies in thermodynamics and physics, on probability statistics, to try to find hidden order in chaos. That led me to fractal studies and all kinds of interesting mathematics. But in psychology, in other words, why do things happen in people's lives? And what's the message that they can bring? I absolutely love that pursuit. And that really, I think, had something to do with back when I was 13, 14. 14 for sure.
I remember the first time I heard you, John, and my path has been very self-taught. I've had an inner voice of knowing all my life. I'd go to speak to my mother or something, she couldn't respond, and instantly it would be like this internal educator as to what was happening with her subconscious, what was going on. Like, it was just teaching me all the time. So my path has been a little bit different, but I came to the conclusion in my 20s that exactly that, that there's a positive within the negative, and, that's how we create the harmony. It was while I was doing my own healing journey and trying to do it in a way that others were saying, and I spiraled down. It just became darker and darker. And I remember sitting in meditation once going, there must be an easier way than this. This doesn't feel like healing. And that's when I came to that understanding of go back and look at every gift that was in each experience and sort of create that new, and it freed me. And the first time I heard you speak, I was just sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is what you're talking about, because I wasn't hearing that, generally within the community that I was sort of, searching in. And I just remember sitting there going, wow. And then the way you were able to explain it and bringing all these different elements to it, it's led you to, the programs that you run, the Demartini method and the breakthrough experience. Is that also because you started to applying it to your life? We want to know, people are going to want to know, well, Dr. Demartini too has actually faced challenges. And how quickly was it for you to apply and actually integrate in order to come to that?
What we teach is what we're working on, isn't it?
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I don't think anybody's done. I think it's working in progress. It's always road construction. I have definitely been blessed to learn a lot of different topics, a lot of different ideas, and getting to work with people, watching people's lives change is so inspiring. But you as you go along on your journey, the way I found it is I learned that values were very important, and that everybody has a hierarchy of values. And I realized that if you live by your highest values, your self-worth goes up, the order goes up, your liberty goes up, your vitality goes up, your space and time horizons expand, you have more self-actualization, fulfillment. So I basically learned to delegate everything else. So I'm useless except in teach, research, write, and travel. I'm basically useless. I had a girl that was saying, are you available for dating? And I said, if you knew how useless I was, you wouldn't want to date me. I told her that. I said, because I'm useless. All I can do, only thing I'm decent at is teach, research, write, and travel. That's about it. And I was joking with her, but not really joking.
Yeah.
I'm warning, because if not, she'd create a fantasy about maybe I'm going to be somebody I'm not,
But bringing in the right partnership would be perfect for you, though, wouldn't it, John?
Yeah. Well, I had a magnificent partner. She passed away. But I've dated a few girls since, and they're lovely girls, and they're fantastic. And they said, if I ever decide not to teach, research, and write, to travel as much as I do, please call me. One of those
Ah,
things.
interesting.
Yeah,
Very
because
interesting.
I'm pretty dedicated to what I do, and that's higher on my priority than, I guess, relationships. So, but I really believe that whatever is happening,
Mm.
if we delegate lower priority things that aren't inspiring to us, and say no to things that aren't really important and stick to the things that are, our drama, drama, whole hummed old drums, pity parties, you know,
Yeah.
all the stuff that we go through goes down. So I can't, anytime there's a challenge, I just give it to the people I delegate it to and said, this is now your problem. And they have job security. And I just basically stick to what I do more effectively. And I am only decent in those areas, and I'm useless out. I haven't cooked since I was 24. I haven't driven a car in 35 years. I've got a concierge, I've got a captain, I've got a pilot, I've got everybody in line, to do it. I hired George Clooney to make love with my girlfriend, to take care of those details, because my girlfriend loved me even more when I did that. So I just keep it simple and delegate.
That's so funny. So, what would you say to the people that go, oh, yeah, but you've got the money to do that? Do you know what I mean? How
Simplest
can I
thing.
bring that into my life?
I didn't have the money when I started that.
Aha,
I
good
got the money
answer.
because I did that.
Yeah, love
Because if
that.
you're free to do what you really love to do and do it in a way that's remunerated in a sustainable, fair exchange manner, become wealthy. I became wealthy not because I started out wealthy and then I delegated. I
Yeah,
delegated so I could become wealthy. People don't get that. They think it's the
love
other way
that.
around.
I took your values test the other week. I thought, let me go in and have a look. I may have done it years ago. I can't recall. Um, and I've done my brand values with someone who started off as a coach, is now a very dear friend. And I was really intrigued by the process. And at the end of it, I just looked at it and went, wow, that is so accurate. I think I was like 36% number one, living spiritually. Second one was like 33%, fulfilling my soul purpose. Then it went down to family, and then very low on sort of organizing and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought that was incredibly true. Nailed it. Fascinating process to do. So I recommend that
Yeah.
anyone listening to this, go and do it. It's a free
Yeah.
thing to do on your
46
website.
years ago, I asked the question, why do some people walk their talk? Some people live their life. Why do some people do what they say and some people don't? I narrowed it down to values. I
Mm,
realized that everybody's got a unique hierarchy of values. The hierarchy of values dictates how they perceive, decide, and act, and therefore their behavior, character, and destiny. And so I realized that most of the value determination process is determining what they think you should have as a value, what it ought to be, what it's supposed to be. And that's not what people live.
mm.
So I created a system on determining what your life demonstrates, not what you fantasize, not what you say it is. What does your life demonstrate? Because I found so many people said, wealth is important to me, but they have no money. Relationship, but they have no dating. I want to know what your life demonstrates. So I put together that on my website, drdemartini.com. It's free, it's
Yeah.
private. You can do it anytime. You can update it, take a look at it, because it does change as you go through life.
Yes.
And so it's wise to keep current with it, because if you're setting goals that aren't congruent with what is most valuable, you'll end up feeling the resistance and the distractions and you know, the procrastination, hesitation, frustrations of trying to be somebody you're not. And this, it's a tool that's useful. It's used all over the place. I mean, millions of people use it now. And it's a simple tool. It takes about 30 minutes of your time.
Yeah, it's powerful. I recommend everyone go in there and do it. I'm gonna get my husband to jump in and take a look. So do you feel that everything that you're doing and all the research and clearly you love to learn and just keep deepening and expanding that. But if we simplify it, are you simply teaching people how to love by resolving these supposed opposing forces?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a love broker.
A love broker. I love that.
Yeah, somebody said, is that like a pimp? And I said, a purposely inspired man with a purpose. Is that what you're saying? No, I'm not a pimp. No, I'm a love broker. I love to help people love themselves and
Yeah.
the people they care about. And I love, and I don't mean romantic, passionate, infatuation type love. I'm
Yeah.
talking about a profound type of love that's tears in your eyes where there's nothing to say, just grace. That kind of love. That's every moment of our life, if we know how to ask the right questions and get really present,
Yeah.
is revealing that and guiding us to our truly inspired state, our spiritual path. It is really just everything, every symptom in our body, every symptom in our business, every symptom in our relationship, every symptom in our social life, every symptom in our finance, our feedback mechanisms guiding us to authenticity and sustainable fair exchange with people to try to make sure there's equity and equanimity, which is our spiritual expression.
Yeah, and I don't feel that people ask enough of those questions that lead us back in. I term them power questions. You know, the power question really invokes a response, that self-examination. And I think people just go along too blindly. It would be amazing if these things were taught, you know, from childhood and through schooling as part of the curriculum. Um,
Well, that there's no reason why we can't. I guess that's what if they did though, I'd probably be out of business. So I'm grateful that I get to participate in it.
well, you might be creating some of the programs for them. Who knows, John?
Well, I have. We've done a lot for kids too. And
Yeah.
that is, and what's interesting is kids get it without all the strategies to dodge. You know,
Yeah.
when you deal with, I did a breakthrough experience, which is my signature program. I've done 1,225 times. About to do the one here in Honolulu in 2026,
Yeah.
1,226 and tomorrow. But I had a children's breakthrough and an adult's breakthrough down the hall from each other. And I had very specialized facilitators
Mhm.
who had nearly between the three of them 100 years worth of experience working with children. They were
Oh,
in their 60s and up to 30 years worth of each of them. And I was working with the adults and going back and forth to the children while the adults were working on little exercises. I'd go back to the children, inspire them, and come back to the adults. And we started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon doing the method, the Demartini method, which is a special method on dissolving emotional baggage and seeing the hidden order in life.
yeah.
And the parents, which were 30 to 70 years old, depending on their age, were still working in the evening. The kids were finished in 4.5 hours on this exercise.
Yeah.
And they started coming in the room with tears in their eyes and hugging their parents and then walking out and loving their parents. And the parents were in tears when this happened. They're still working the same exercise because the parents are trying to figure out a way of maintaining their pride and holding on to their fantasy about how life that they fantasize that's incongruent with what they value. And they're trying to figure out how to not lose their fantasy and lose their pride in the process. So they dodge the questions and try to figure out how to navigate through and dodge the issues when the kids just answer them.
Yeah.
They just get to it. And they get breakthroughs quick. So it's interesting to watch the accumulation of the false identity as we go through life, trying to fit in. As Carl Jung says, we're in a world, we're trying to stand out, but we're trapped trying to fit in. And so
Mm.
we want to make a difference, but how are you going to make a difference fitting in? You make a difference by standing out. And conformity doesn't make enormity. So what we do is we literally get trapped in this false facade that we have to break through. And that's what breaks is about, breaking through the facade and coming through with the true
Yeah.
you, which is way more magnificent.
And people get really comfortable with the familiar. It's like, I know how to do this. I may not like it. I think I want to change, but I actually know how to play this aspect out in life. You know, like you know, spotlights on me. Do you find
Well,
that with people and it's having to
yeah, yeah.
actually shift that?
Of course, I'm stuck just like anybody else because
Yeah.
when you go to a restaurant, you look at the menu like you're going to get something different, then you order the same friggin' thing a lot of times. So I'm stuck when it comes to ordering food. I have this my on that menu. I know I've narrowed it down. I go,
Stay with
I
what you
want.
know.
I just go in my regular.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have it ready before I even get to my table. They know
Yeah.
me.
So I can
So
imagine.
we're all stuck in some way. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm stuck in my habits sometimes,
Gosh, if
but
we had
we
it all
all,
perfect, there'd be no reason to be here experiencing the world, would there?
yeah. If any two people are exactly the same, one's not necessary, they say. So I'd rather be unique and find out my own little path. But at the same time, um, if somebody says, "Hey, we're trying something, this type of new meal out," I'll try it. But
Uh-huh.
if I'm in a menu and I've already looked through the menu, I already kind of know what I like out of it, I narrow it down. But if somebody's got completely things I've never had, I'll go for it. I'm not that rigid. But I have a pattern.
You're just not going to cook it.
Well, you wouldn't want me to cook it. By me not driving, I've saved a lot of animals' lives, and by me not cooking, I've saved a lot of stomachs. So
Yeah.
I've delegated to specialists.
Beautiful.
I'm having a I'm having a dinner Monday night. I'm actually having my chef make dinner for Alan Wong. And Alan Wong, actually Monday afternoon. Alan Wong is probably the most known chef in the world, was the wealthiest chef in the world. And he's an amazing guy. But him and his partner, I'm going to have on the ship, and they're coming on for lunch. And so, here's the top chef in the world. And of course, the chefs are going like, what are we going to make for him? Because
Yeah.
they're like amazing.
Intimidated.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell them, I'm joking. I'm going to joke with them. I says, well, I worked all morning on this thing for you. No, I don't. Me cooking is like zero. The probability of me cooking is zero. You can count on me to be researching, writing, and traveling and teaching. You can't count on me to cook.
Yeah, I can cook, but I'm pretty basic. It's not my thing of really being in the kitchen and, I have to make something that's tasty but quick, or
Yeah.
not. So my
I
son-in-law,
can I
who's
can grab an apple, I can open up a yogurt container, I can drink a bottle of water.
yeah, my son-in-law who's Austrian, his father came out and he was a five-star Michelin chef in London. And so we put on a barbecue and this and that, and he's like, "Hey, this is great. Did you make this?" And I'm like, no, no, I have to be honest, um, which is really interesting. But in the end, I just say, look, I put out a whole lot of love, but I'll, if I need to buy something from the supermarket and it's pre-made, it's going to be there. But hey, it's a table full of food, table full of love.
Well, I would rather surround myself with people who are masters of what they do, who love what they do, and have them do what they do and stick to what my specialty is. And
Yeah.
mine is just learning and teaching. And so I have quality cooks and quality this, and you know, I try to do everything in deli. I don't clean. I'm useless except for what I do: teach, research, and write and travel. That's it.
But that's what brings you joy. That's what makes
That's
you
what I
feel
love doing.
fulfilled.
Why? To me, it doesn't make any sense. I ask myself, why would I want to do anything other than what I love doing every day? It doesn't make any sense. And people say, well, but you got this duty and you got this duty. And I said, no, that's your belief system.
Yeah.
You could delegate that and go focus on something that's deeply meaningful and earn way more income and pay for that. So I just did that. And then I invested and I made sure I invested. And what most people want to do, they want to live beyond their means and then they want to buy consumables that depreciate in value. And then they fill up a quarter of their house with stuff that goes down in value. And then they struggle and then they're living by duty and working for other people and all that other stuff. And I just methodically prioritize my life.
Yeah.
I lived moderately and I saved a lot and invested it. And
Yep.
then my money made me more money than I was working. And now I get to do what I love every day and delegate everything else. And I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing. I
And do
stick to
you
what I love.
continue to make goals? John, do you
Yeah,
continue to make goals
yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah.
I got so many goals and I'm going to need multiple lives to get them done.
How many books have you actually written?
If you take just the paperbacks, about 46, and there's
Uh-huh.
another one coming out. If you take manuscripts and textbooks and all those other books, it's about 300.
Wow. And why live on a boat?
Well, it's the best address I've been able to find on the planet. We go to
Or
the
a
most,
ship? I'd say it's probably a ship. Yeah.
yeah, it's a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, a ship has a boat on it,
Yeah.
so we got boats on it. But it's the best address I've been able to find on planet Earth, and
Okay.
we go to the most amazing places, get to do the most amazing things, go on expeditions. It's an educational experience, and the people that live on there are extraordinary. They're all movers and shakers that do amazing things, and there's only 100 of us that live on this big ship, and we travel around the world.
Little village on the water.
It's a community of great, loving people, and it's magnificent.
Beautiful. So, what would be the one message you'd like to leave people with that they can harness and start to create change? I mean, you've said so much, but just that
Yeah,
one.
go and do the value determination process, whoever's listening there on my website, drdemartini.com. It's free, it's private. Just go and do it. And then do it and make sure you're integral with your answers and not writing down fantasies. Don't write down what you think it ought to be, should be, supposed to be, got to be, wish to be, used to be. Write down what your life demonstrates.
Mm-hmm.
And then really meditate on that and ask yourself, how can I get handsomely and beautifully paid to do what's highest? And how can I delegate, surround myself with people that do the things that are lowest? And every time you do that, you liberate yourself. And then realize that your identity is revolving around that highest one. And when you give yourself permission to be you, the world starts rewarding you for that. I'm absolutely certain you will get rewarded by doing that. And the magnificence who you are is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself. So don't impose a fantasy of trying to be second at being somebody else. Be first at being you. And don't compare yourself to what other people do. Compare your actions to your own highest values to see how congruent you are with what you dream about. And then give yourself permission to metric the progress you're making and document the progress you make each day. And ask quality questions. How specifically is whatever's happened today, how did it help me get one step closer to it? And how is whatever happened on the way, not in the way?
Mm-hmm.
And prioritize it. And if you do, you have control over three things in your life: your perception, decisions, and actions. If you master the prioritization of that, you're doing as much as any human being can do in a day, and you're going to build incremental momentum to become unstoppable doing what you love.
Beautiful. I think listeners are going to have to sort of listen multiple times to this conversation. It just keeps coming to mind. If I could ask you, I think it was 2006 that The Secret came out, and suddenly there was this explosion about manifestation everywhere, all over social media at the moment. There's all these, the latest master of manifestation, and I see some incongruencies there. So I'd really like to ask you, with all your vast experience, what's the fantasy that's being taught at the moment in regards to manifestation that sets people up for feeling like they're failing at it?
Well, if you envy somebody else and try to imitate somebody else and try to manifest something that's not truly meaningful and most important and highest in priority on your values, you will get the feedback to let you know you're being inauthentic.
Yeah.
And if I had people when The Secret came out. I had a woman come up to me once and she says, Dr. Demartini, I read the book 6 times. I watched the movie 20 times. And every day I go out to my mailbox and there's not $1 million check in it. What am I doing wrong? I said, have you considered grounding yourself and considered doing a service that actually fills people's needs to be able to earn money? Because when you do, you're going to be more likely to earn money. Not that you couldn't have a rich uncle that you might get a check someday, but my experience is if I go out of my way and make a difference in other people's lives and serve people, I have a higher probability of earning an income. And if I manage my money wisely, I have a higher probability of having it work for me. And I can become its master, not its slave.
Yeah.
But you living in a fantasy that you're going to get somehow a miracle of that, I think the probability is not in your favor. I'm not saying you can't,
Mm-hmm.
but I would increase the probability. What could you do to increase the probability of having $1 million check in there? And I can tell you, do $1 million worth of service or do $10 million worth of service. And there's no limit on the amount of service you can provide. Because all you have to do is find another human being, and every human being has a need, and care enough about humanity to go out and find how you can serve that need, and you will end up being prospered. And so get grounded and set real expectations that are congruent. If you can get up in the morning and can't wait to do what you love doing, and you do it in a way that serves another individual, your life's going to prosper. But if you live in a fantasy that you don't have to do anything, you're just going to visualize it by itself, not likely. Although Phelps got 28 gold medals visualizing, he did visualization, but he also put in 11 hours a day working on it.
Yeah, he didn't just sit there and visualize
Yeah,
himself
I
training and Yeah.
I got a small, excuse my expression, but I got a small ass because I worked it off.
I think it's that thing, that started at that question at the beginning about spirituality and your physicality. And I think it's that thing of, ensuring we've got both. Yes. So, meditate and visualize and do all of that, but
All the above.
move through the world as well.
Yeah.
And so much of what you're talking about really does come back to the values
Yeah.
and, and aligning to the values.
I've done 4 podcasts today, a keynote speech, 2 consults today, and I still got a room set up and one more this evening. So
Yeah.
I keep busy. I would get in trouble if I didn't do what I really love to do. And to me, I'd rather fill my day with how I love it than it filling up with how I don't.
Well, it gives you energy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It actually just
Yeah.
amps you because you're fulfilling the very things
What
that
you love
bring
doing.
you joy and that you love, and you're being of service, and it's
Don't
beautiful.
people think people who don't do what they love, they want a break, they want a vacation, they want to retire, they want to get away from it. People I know that are inspired by what they do and very engaged in what they do, found what they love doing and just continued to do it.
Yeah, beautiful. And sometimes you can just bring it in a way that transitions you. Like my eldest daughter is in a role in government that she doesn't necessarily love, but she's very much coming back to her creative self and setting up a business on the side that's ensuring she gets creative. And who knows then what happens and what that transitions her into because
I
she's
think
living from
the
what she
symptoms
loves.
the symptoms of our life will kick our butt until we finally get authentic and what we really want to do. It won't let us down. It won't let you down. It will be there to kick your butt until you get to be truthful to yourself.
Yeah, it's serving you. It's going to
Yeah.
keep kicking until you make that change.
I'm telling you what, that's why there's more patting on our butt than there is on our shoulders.
For most people, not all people. So, Dr. Demartini, the podcast is called Inner Voice of Knowing because that's where I like to guide people back to because I see that as our GPS in life. I don't like to call it intuition. That feels sort of ethereal. For me, it is something that's very clear that has driven my life since I was a young kid. And when I work with people, they go, God, it is. It gets louder and um, uh, stronger for them. Do you feel that you've had an inner voice of knowing in however you experience that guiding you along your journey to bring you to this point
Well,
today?
in 2006, when they did the movie The Secret, I said, when the voice and the vision on the inside is louder than all opinions on the outside, you're about your life, begin to master your life.
Yeah,
I've been following my inner voice and vision since I was a teenager.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Considering you've been doing keynotes and podcasts and another podcast to come, we won't draw on too much of your time. In fact, you've given almost an hour, and I'm just so appreciative of that, John.
Thank you.
Really thank you. And can't encourage people enough to go to your website and to do their values. It is free and it's very insightful. And as Dr. Demartini says, do it authentically. Don't go from the story and the fantasy. And I know from personal experience from doing it, it's very accurate. And I know a girlfriend of mine, when I told her you were going to be on, she jumped on and done it. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly you, and you're living in alignment with that. And I know people that have done your breakthrough experience as well. In fact, one of my very dear friends who does brand values in a very different way, like what you do with your values, and they actually aligned from what I did with her and yours that I did. And apparently you'd said to her, gosh, she's really insightful and getting all of this. And she's like, well, can I go home early? And you're like, no, you're staying to do the whole thing. And she said it was a fantastic experience. And I know others that have done that as well. And why wouldn't it be an amazing experience with where you come from, with what what you continue to do? Thank you so much for what you bring to the world and to people's lives. I really appreciate
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do it. Thank you for being patient, me getting on here because I was running a minute behind there. But thank you. Thanks for your show, the questions, and may we continue to fulfill our missions.
Absolutely.